Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Pena, and I am a marriage and family studies major, and I did my internship at Madison County Juvenile Probation. Those of you who are taking classes at BYU, Idaho, on campus in Rexburg, uh, Madison County Juvenile Probation is in Rexburg, Idaho. So I've had the opportunity to do my internship here. Absolutely loved it and would recommend it to anyone. Um, so as I go throughout this presentation, I hope that you'll be able to understand a little bit more about what my internship was like, my experience, my responsibilities, and um, what you can kind of expect if you do your internship here with or with a juvenile probation place. Um, so how I found my internship and what it's all about. So when I was living in Moscow, Idaho, just it was last October of 2015, I was calling around to try and set up internships for my last semester, and I called Health and Welfare Department kind of to see if I could get an internship with one of their departments. I called Juvenile Probation in Moscow, Idaho, and as I was kind of searching around to kind of find out where I could do an internship at, I came across decided that me and my wife are from Rexburg, and decided to call juvenile probation in Rexburg. And so when I did, I called and I talked to this person here. In the pink shirt, his name's Kirk Mace. He's the director of Madison County Juvenile Probation. I talked with him for a little bit and told him a little bit about my degree, some of the classes that I had taken. And as we were talking, came to find out that he was one of my father's neighbors a couple of years ago before he had moved. So he knew my dad and was willing to allow me to come do an internship with him in his program. He usually does about one or two interns every semester from BYU, Idaho, social work interns, and I'm a marriage and family studies major, so he does other, people that are in a related field. So if you're interested, he's the man to talk to. Right next to Kirk is a lady named Moni. She's one of the probation officers. She's a full-time employee, and she's been working there for about 8 years, I believe. Before that, she was a tracker for a couple of years, and then was able to be a probation officer. And then right next to Moni is Jared Young. He's a probation officer, and he has been a probation officer for about 13 years, for 12 years for Madison County. All of them have a degree. Both probation officers have a bachelor's degree, and Kirk has a master's in social work, I believe from ISU. There's three other part-time employees of Madison County Juvenile Probation, or actually four. There's a tracker, there's a diversion program coordinator, and a marriage, I think it's called family group decision-making coordinator, and there's a community service coordinator. And they're not in the picture. They weren't full-time. They weren't there. And so as far as my internship, there was a lot of people involved, and it was really overall a good experience for me. Some of the responsibilities that I had, you can see the picture that I posted there on the right side of the screen here. This was the paper that Kirk had given me prior to me starting my internship. He had mentioned that if I was able to kind of comprehend this list of things that was on throughout my internship, I would have had a successful and a good internship experience. So he gave me this list, and I frequently went over it to make sure I understood a lot of the responsibilities, a lot of the things that I was understanding through the program. And so because of this little checklist, I was able to kind of review back over to make sure I was kind of fulfilling responsibilities, making sure I could really get my full experience from my internship. Some of my responsibilities, the main ones, technically my position as an intern was called a tracker, which they have one part-time employee. I think he gets about 16 hours a week as a tracker, and I'll kind of explain a little bit more about what a tracker is. But I would do weekly check-ins. So with probation, you serve kids from about 12 to, and it can actually go to about 21 years of age. And but for the most part, they're right in between about probably 13 and 17 years old is where we serve. When I got into the internship experience, we were serving about 55 juveniles, and I think it dropped to around 40 by the time I end. So I did weekly check-ins, and what that means is these kids that were assigned to probation there's levels. They would have level 1, 2, and 3 probation. What level probation they were on, and they all start out on level 1, and they would have to do weekly check-ins. They would have to come in every Tuesday to check in with their probation officer to make sure that they were following standards, to make sure that they were doing what they needed to do. If they had any questions, or if they wanted to go out of state, if they wanted to go on a vacation, they had to check in with their probation officer to make sure that they were okay with that. And part of my responsibilities as an intern was I was able to conduct those check-ins, ask them how their fines and fees were doing. They have to pay for their community service hours, or their urine analysis they have to do for drug testing, and any other things that they have to do. They have to pay for their fines and fees for the program. That was one of the things that I did, and then completing house checks or school checks. And I kind of mentioned that as doing urine analysis, UAs, where you have to make sure that they're not doing any drugs or alcohol while they're on the probation, or that it is they receive a probation violation and can extend the time of their probation period. So we would complete house checks. We would go, this was kind of as the tracker side of things. Every evening they would have a curfew. They would even have to be in at 7, 8, or 9 o'clock at night, depending on which level of probation they're on. And we would go to their homes, make sure they're at home, and ask them if they needed help with anything, or if they had any questions or concerns. And oftentimes, most of the time, they were at their home when they were supposed to be. Very seldom, well, there was a couple of juveniles that struggled with that, I guess, that standard, that rule that they had to follow, and have received multiple probation violations for not letting the probation officer know that they wouldn't be home at a certain time, and kind of taking advantage of that, of the probation officers in that at that time. And then there was another thing that I had to do, is updating IJOS. It's called the Idaho Juvenile Offender System. And so with our weekly check-ins, we would write down a summary of how the check-in went. If there was any concerns or anything that happened, we had to update that information into the IJOS system. We attended court on Mondays and Wednesdays. Mondays was more of an admit and deny hearing of their charges that they had been charged of. And then on Wednesdays was another set of court, which is called jump court, or it stands for Juvenile Making Progress. We just call it jump court. And it was kind of another program that has helped, that some of the kids on probation, not all of them, were accepted into this program to help push them along with their probation experience, and trying to get them back into society, and making them, having them accomplish certain goals or skills. And then I also was able to sit in on staff meetings. So some of the probation, the kids on probation would, if they had so many probation violations or kept breaking laws while on probation, then they would go to 5C, which is a detention center for youth. And sometimes we admitted one person to the state, which is the Juvenile Correction Center in St. Anthony in Idaho. And it's more of a long-term rehabilitation center where these juveniles would go. there was a couple of kids that were on our probation that were in JCC. And because of that, we would go once a month and have staff meetings and sit with the kid, where we would sit with a group leader from JCC, the probation officer, and others involved, and kind of we would meet with how the kids are doing, how they're kind of working to try to get back into society without reoffending. So those are some of the responsibilities that I did. Like I said, this was more of a tracker position, going to court, updating information for them, doing house checks, visiting the kids. So it was really, really involved with the kids. I had the opportunity. Also, one of the responsibilities that I didn't put on here was one of the probation officers asked me to work with a kid individually with community service hours because he didn't get along with the community service coordinator. And so I was able to take over that responsibility and coming up with community service hours with the kid and just supervising him as we did some stuff. Usually we just cleaned up around the office and went to some parks to clean up trash. And so I just kind of monitored one of the youth during those times. So those were kind of my responsibilities as a tracker, as an intern at Madison County Juvenile Probation. Some of the important connections and how I benefited from my internship kind of, went together. So a lot of the things that I recognized as connections with my coursework were, I don't remember a lot of the classes, but family relationships, families and dynamics, and making yourself marketable, and child and adolescent development. So like I said, I don't remember the classes, but I remember learning a lot about relationships, family relationships, parents and spouses, and the kids' relationships with their parents, kind of theories and dynamics, how families work and how they are supposed to function. Those were big parts of recognizing juveniles and what has happened, what has caused them to be on probation, and how to help them further along aside from their family function. One of the things that I remember taking a class about is making yourself marketable. In my internship, I think I realized that making yourself marketable, meaning getting experience, having a resume, networking with people, getting yourself out there to get to know people, allows you to be more marketable. They see you having experience in a certain field, makes people more comfortable to want to hire you, and confident in your abilities to work as a professional. And then child and adolescent development. One of the classes that we took was, or a couple of the classes about child development, adolescent development. Many of the youth that were on probation all developed differently. Some of them were very good at school and had different reasons why they're on probation, and some kids were on probation just because they couldn't quite function in school, wouldn't show up to school, and couldn't get their grades. Couldn't get their grades good enough to, or not showing up to school is why they were on probation. So a lot of those, you see different developments as some of the kids in the program. How I benefited personally from the experience, it was from networking with other programs and other people. When I was able to go to court, jump court, and I was able to see many of the other programs that are involved in the youth. I was able to meet counselors, judges, other therapists. We call others some rap specialists, where they get the group together and almost kind of like a counseling session, but it's where they get more people involved and trying to help the kid recognize their resources that they have to be successful. So counseling and community service, or school people, principals, and involved. So networking with other programs, I was able to meet with principals, from many different schools, and like I said, judges, attorneys, and other counseling agencies that were involved in a juvenile's experience and trying to help them progress. And then also being professional, because I was able to network and meet with all these different people. I was able to see, even though different programs, very, very professional, um, very understanding, knowledgeable about their fields, and a lot of it, I believe, not only their education but their experience in their fields allowed them to be very professional and knowledgeable about what they do. And then also by fulfilling my responsibilities, felt like I was able to help benefit my program and benefited from my internship. And so, like I said, I would highly recommend this internship. I definitely would. It was a great experience getting to know many of the employees at Madison County and the Juvenile Probation Office. And if you are interested in doing the internship, there's the website. I made the link for the website there. Kirk Mace is the director of Madison County Juvenile Probation, and the main phone number is there also. And I would highly recommend, if you're interested in this type of field, I think this would be good. It even has a lot with, because of the court procedures that I was involved with, it had a little bit with, I was able to understand more of law, and the court systems that were involved. So some terminology was different for me, and kind of getting to know the experience. I would definitely recommend this internship experience and hope you learned a lot from my presentation. Thank you.